Okay guys, I'm finally testing it, at least as much as I can in my state with a still broken wrist. But this is the MLAstro SAL-33 mount. This is basically, if you want to buy something like a ZW AM5N, but you want something cheaper that works pretty much as well and might even be better in some respects, well, this is something that you should consider. It's from a brand called MLAstro, which I've already shown on the channel with a spectroheliograph that they make that is amazing. And that one thing that I loved about the spectroheliograph is that it has knobs on it that are a pleasure to turn. By the way, idea for MLAstro here, I want like a fidget knob like that. I don't need the equipment, I just want your knob from the spectroheliograph so I can turn it like that because it's such a good feeling. Anyhow, I like MLAstro from their spectroheliograph. Very beautiful instrument, and so I was very excited about this mount here. And so this mount is basically, as I was mentioning, in terms of the specs on paper, it sounds very much like the ZW-M5N. You have 15 kilograms of payload without counterweight. It's a strain wave gear, sometimes known as an harmonic drive mount. And if you add a 5 kilogram counterweight to that via a counterweight shaft that can be attached at the bottom, you can have up to 20 kilograms of payload. The mount itself attaches to the tripod via basically the same connection points as the ZW-M5N, so it's compatible with any tripod that is also compatible with the very popular AM5N. And it has, just like the M5N, a central 3/8 of an inch screw hole in the middle so that you can use it with photo tripods, that kind of stuff as well. I have it on top of the ZW TC40 tripod here. Okay, so let's have a quick walk around the mount itself. So first you can see the appearance is very striking in that it is silver. It has a special anodizing process so that this is supposed to last very long in direct sunlight, and this is because MLAstro is still known for the spectroheliograph, so they expect you to use this mount not just for deep sky photography, but also for solar photography, and they want to make sure that this mount can be in the sun all the time without changing color or the anodization having issues. Everything in the mount, by the way, is apparently machined aluminum, so it is very solid, and you can see there are very prominent screws all over the place, all across the mount. This is intentional. This is apparently so that the mount can be very easily serviceable either by the manufacturer or by the end users. You can replace parts that are broken. This is great in terms of right to repair. And the pin layout, like the electronics, as well as the software of the mount, are open source, so you can actually get that and improve that yourself or have someone build new boards for the mount, that kind of stuff. So it is very open for the long term. Okay, in terms of the input here, we have the standard USB port for control of the mount via your computer or your ASI Air. It works perfectly fine with either. You have an ST4 port that doubles as a hand control port. I don't have a hand controller, and ST4 is cancer and you should never use it. So I cannot really say anything about it. And we have the power port, which wants 12 volts, 3 amps. So this one worked fine, by the way, but something that was interesting is that with my SV241 Pro power box from SV Boni, I wasn't able to power the mount reliably from the power box. I'm not sure why. It worked with the SI Air. It worked with other power boxes, but not the SV Boni one. So go figure. From the front, we have the very nice logo, again, with all of the very prominent screws that you can remove and get to the inside of the mount. And then we have the dual saddle, Vixen, Losmandy. And I really like that they chose to keep the two parts of the saddle independent. So those two parts there are independent, which means that you can really tighten one part to really hold the telescope in place before you tighten the other one without fearing to have like some kind of weird angle, which can happen if you have like a single plate here rather than two separate plates. So I really like that. Then if we go towards the bottom, we have a level, which I never use. We have a gradation for a rough altitude adjustment of the polar alignment base. And here we have like the main highlight, I would say, of the mount, or the main selling point, what they call zero shift polar alignment, meaning that basically with those two altitude knobs completely locked down and those two azimuth knobs basically locked down, you can move the mount around even with very heavy payloads and do your polar adjustment very easily. And I can confirm it happens, it works. The altitude adjustment screw there, if we look at it, it's a very, very fine screw. So you have very tiny adjustments. The altitude adjustment on the mount is beautiful. And in terms of altitude adjustment, we use those two screws, very standard system. I kind of wish the threads there were a bit finer, as fine as the threads on the altitude adjustments. Then I would have a better impression of polar alignment. So in terms of polar alignment, it works really, really well. No issues whatsoever. And the altitude is a pleasure. The azimuth is normal, it's as good as the AM5N, but overall the polar alignment is better than the AM5N. Up to now, my polar alignment ranking for strain wave gear mounts was at the very top, the EM31 Pro by MLAstro, followed by the WD20, which is my main mount that I have on the balcony back there, and then followed by the AM5N. So that was my ranking. My ranking has changed. I put this at roughly the same level as the MCAM EM31 Pro. The only drawback that this has compared to the MCAM is that if you need to do a large altitude adjustment, you need to use the provided wrench, which is this guy here, to actually unscrew some elements on the base, move things around, and then tighten again before you do your final adjustments. Overall, the mount is very solid, very robust. It feels like very confidence inspiring. And it is $1,100. So it is much cheaper than something like the AM5N, which is really an equivalent type of mount. Now, this is driven by an open source firmware called OnStep X. It's a branch, I think, of the standard OnStep. And if you're familiar with the channel, I've already shown quite a lot of mounts that are based on OnStep. Proxy Sky makes those. Warp Astron makes those. MLAstro is also OnStep. I bought a T-Sig AliExpress mount that's also OnStep, and this is no different. The big difference with this mount is that the way it's been implemented is basically smarter than the other mounts I've seen. What you have is that when you plug in the mount, it actually creates a Wi-Fi hotspot that you can connect to. Up to now, and also Bluetooth, but that's no difference than any other of the, or most of the other OnStep mounts. But what's very different is that you can access that hotspot, open up your browser, and then you have access to a control system where you can change all of the options. And with other mounts, you would have to use a hand controller if it's provided in the first place, because some of those options are only changeable via that, either via the hand controller or via the system within the mount. And that's the case for things like meridian flip settings that are very important. And that in many mounts that I've tested that are OnStep, the default settings are subpar for proper meridian flip management. This mount here, the default settings are good, and it comes with the best documentation I've ever seen in a mount. It's a series of, I believe, around 4 YouTube videos made by the creator of this mount, and they're a must-watch. And after you've watched the videos, you will know everything there is to know about the mount, how to use OnStep, the weird characteristics of OnStep, how to make the meridian flip work, and how to guide most efficiently possible. And that knowledge is actually extensible more or less to a lot of other OnStep mounts, at least the ones that let you access parameters like a preferred side of peer, which is not all of them, unfortunately. So this is very well done. It's open source, and any enhancements to the firmware are actually provided back to OnStep. So it's really a company that makes sure, like, do you have the pin layouts available? You have the software that's open source. It makes sure that it is extremely open, in contrast with some other major astrophotography players that really keep their stuff close to the chest and don't want to reveal or share anything. This is the complete opposite, and as an open source developer myself, it's something that I really care about and I really appreciate about this mount. Okay, so how did we test this mount and what results did I see? Okay, so this is what I used with the mount. It's not what I wanted to use originally, my Newtonian, which is actually in the end overall the same weight. I made sure to make this as heavy as possible. And when I tried with my Newtonian, I dropped it, I broke a few things. So because I cannot use my left hand, I tried only with my right hand. Not a good idea. So I've used this, the SQF55, which was actually the guide scope for me, and then the main scope was the GS350. I've done reviews of both on the channel if you're interested, and that's what I've been using to test all of that. All of this has been controlled via Nina, via a Windows computer. I've tested with the ESI Air. It worked fine. I've tested with the Toptech Astro Station. It worked fine. I've tested with the StellarMate Pro. It worked fine. So it's typical on-step, right? It's going to work fine. But that means that effectively I have not tested the mount with very high payloads because I'm not able physically to do that right now. But with that limitation in mind, what were the results? We can now go inside and see some results of both like calibration assistant, guiding assistant, and of course the guide tracks as well as their analysis in RA and frequency analysis. So let's go inside and have a look at that. Before that, this kind of review is a lot of work, so if you want to support the channel, you can take a moment to leave a like on this video, leave a comment, let us know what you think about this mount. And if you're wanting to support me even more and you're planning on buying anything from Amazon, even if it's not astrophotography, Agena, High Point Scientific, First Light Optics, etc., if you do so after clicking one of the links that I have down below, it will help me out at no cost to you. If you want to sponsor the channel directly, make those videos directly possible, you can become a channel member. It's the join button next to the subscribe button, or a Patreon supporter. I have the link down in the description and the pinned comments. And my channel members, my Patreon supporters, this channel would no longer be here without you. So thank you so much for your support. Okay, with that, let's have a look at what this mount really gives us. By the way, a couple of things that I forgot to mention is one, with that polar alignment that is really good, it was apparently designed from the ground up to support an automated polar alignment module, which apparently they're working on and they hope to release this year. How awesome will it be to be able to put on that mount a little module on there, and then you have your automated polar alignment. You've already seen how amazing it was on that 3D printed Open Astro Explorer mount that I showed on the channel recently. And on the full-fledged mount, that sounds amazing. And another thing that I forgot to point out is that, as far as I can tell, there is no cable management on the saddle itself. So unlike something like the EM31 Pro or the AM5N, you won't be able to use like through the mount kind of cabling. So yeah, it's something to keep into account. But at the price, it's very difficult to complain about this kind of stuff. Still, something to note. Anyway, how did it perform? So first, this here is the result of the guiding assistant itself. Overall, looks very nice, no issue whatsoever. You can see that I have a polar alignment error of 1 arc minute. This is because after bringing it via the current mechanism to almost 0, because my balcony is a big slab of wood, the moment I stand up and leave the balcony, it springs back into place enough to move the mount to affect the polar alignment by roughly 1 arc minute. So there you go. And after measuring the backlash, these are the backlash results. You can see the red arrows are the one measured, and the white ones are the ideal values. Yeah, it's very, very similar. Reminds me of when I was measuring the backlash for the WD-20 mount from Warp Astron. It's very similar. It's very nice to see. A random screenshot that I took after guiding. This was guiding actually on the calibration assistant point, which is very close to the celestial equator, meaning the worst place to guide at. And at that time, I was getting 0.65 arc seconds total with 0.55 in RA, which is what we are really worried about. when we do reviews, right? Because declination is not supposed to move. And this is actually very good for that night. It was, very bad seeing. We have very bad seeing in winter here in Tokyo. So typically I rarely get better than 0.6 arc seconds RMS overall. Usually it's around 0.7, 0.8, regardless of the mount. And also on the nights that I used this mount, there was kind of a bit of wind. So it was, I was not doing it any favors. And just for information, this is the result of the mount calibration right next to the celestial equator, which is also the best place to calibrate your mount at. Overall, nothing to look at. It's very nice. Let's have a look at some actual guide charts. So I have here the recording of basically one night. This is a pretty good example where we see that over time we have roughly 0.7 arc seconds of guiding total, again 0.55 in right ascension, and I was using the, not permanent peak, but predictive peak algorithm with a fixed period of 430 seconds, as is suggested in the Hard2 by MLAstro. Now, also something about the instructions that are on YouTube from MLAstro. There are settings for the motors themselves that you can change, and the motors are on the mounts that were shipped. They've been pre-configured to be able to support high loads in very cold conditions. Whereas apparently I could do some changes to get even better guiding in the warmer conditions that I have in Tokyo. It barely goes towards 0 Celsius on a bad night these days. And of course, a lighter payload that I was using on the mount. So apparently I could be getting better than that, but again, this is pretty much what is expected in these conditions. My WD-20 was imaging next to this mount, and it was seeing roughly the same figures, slightly worse, but then it had a slightly heavier payload. So honestly, I don't see any issues with that. If we look at some other guides timings, we have this guy has a bit more RA, but you can see that there are more spikes, and that's because the wind was actually picking up more and more throughout the evening. At least when I was awake. We see something very similar there. I was still awake at that time, and indeed there was quite a bit of wind on the balcony. I don't know about the wind at this time for the two last ones, but we're still towards 0.62 RA, 0.73 total, so very much decent. And then towards the end of the night, we're still at 0.72 total. It's working very well. There's no issues whatsoever. Of course, I also checked a real-time view of a star centered with the mount running. I didn't see any oscillations or anything like that would disqualify the mount for anything. Overall, it seems to be working very well. If I go towards the longest period I have, even though it's a bit affected by wind, we can go and analyze the selected frames. So we can see the actual chart here with drift corrected. And this is the guide assist, the frequency analysis. And so we can see that most of the error that we see in right ascension is at a period of 280 seconds. And that's something we're going to see quite a bit actually, because now if I do the same thing, but I want to look at the raw right ascension, this is the raw right ascension over this period of time in blue. And if I look at the frequency analysis, you can see that we have a peak at around, it's 440 here, it's 430 in theory, but there's a second peak that's also quite high at 280 seconds. And so with my PPEC algorithm, it seems to have really taken care of this 430 seconds peak while having been more reactive, less predictive about the 280 seconds peak. So I thought that was very interesting to see. And I think there was one time, I think it's this guy around like 10:45 p.m., where if I look at the frequency analysis, you can see that the long period was still high, but the 280 seconds was even higher. If I run the analysis with the corrections included, we can see that the 290 seconds in this case, so around 280 seconds period, is apparently the clearest contributor to this periodic error or to the overall RA thingy. So maybe with some motor changes in the settings that we have access to via the web portal when you connect to the mount via Wi-Fi, we'd be able to optimize that. I'll likely try in the near future. Overall though, this is a very competent mount. I do not see any issues with it. I really like where it's coming from, the open source aspect, the open pin aspect of everything, and the fact that it should be fairly easily serviceable. It does not have some luxury features like the saddle plugs or through the mount cabling, but it has good tracking, it has beautiful polar alignment, it has full compatibility with tripods that work with the AM5N, and it is considerably cheaper at $1,100. Also, it looks really, really nice in this silver, like no paint, like, I kind of love the look. But that might be just me. It goes very well with the SQ-55, by the way. So if you have an SQ-A telescope, you should get this mount simply because the colors match. That is a perfect reason to make a big purchase. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a very good mount. Now, I've seen, like, these days, whenever I review a Strainwave gear mount, they're all exceptionally good, except like the $500 one, which is passable. But yeah, I'm no longer blown away, but it's a very good mount at a very low price. And I do like that the issues that come with using on-step, I still don't like on-step, especially the way that they treat Meridian, but the fact that MLAstro actually set the right settings from the get-go, also gave you access to the settings easily via that web interface, and has a series of videos telling you exactly what settings do what and how to use them, that makes it pretty amazing. And so I think that really overcomes a lot of the issues of on-step. I did run, by the way, into one bug of on-set, which was that after it hit a limit, then the mount became completely unresponsive until I had to turn it off and on. And then when I turned it off and on, it had forgotten its home position, so I had to manually slew it back to home position and then do off and on again. But this has been the case with every on-step mount that I've had. This is something that I mentioned with the WD-20, I believe. And it's apparently already been fixed with the latest firmware of the MLAstro SAL-33 mount. So it's already good. I haven't tested the change, but it's already good. So that's great to see. And because it's open source, the change is available for every on-step mount out there as well. Isn't that awesome? Anyway, this was a very long-awaited review, so I'm sorry it took a long time, but here we are. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. And of course, if you're planning on buying anything from Agena, High Point Scientific, Amazon, etc., if you do so after clicking one of the links down below, it will help me out at no cost to you. If you want to support me directly, Patreon member, channel member, you guys rock. Thank you so much for your support. With that, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, whenever you can, to look up at the stars, and I'll see you next time.